The 2026 Formula One season is already being framed as a reset. New cars, new engines, and potentially a new power structure. But before we even get there, the final cracks of 2025 are still echoing through the paddock. And now, one shocking statement from Max Verstappen has dragged McLaren's championship-winning year back into the spotlight, exposing a controversy that many believed was buried under trophies and celebrations. According to Verstappen, Oscar Piastri didn't just lose the 2025 title battle. He was betrayed. Betrayed by his own team, compromised by obedience, and sacrificed in the name of a carefully controlled championship narrative. If that's true, then the chaos that erupted behind closed doors at McLaren wasn't accidental. It was inevitable. And if you want to understand how this affects McLaren's future, Piastri's fate, and the 2026 grid, make sure you subscribe right now, because this story is far bigger than one radio call at Monza. Max Verstappen's words hit the paddock like a delayed explosion. Not because they were loud, but because they confirmed what many inside Formula One had quietly whispered since the middle of 2025. When Verstappen said that Oscar Piastri had sold his soul by obeying McLaren team orders, he wasn't just criticizing one decision. He was exposing a philosophy clash that may have reshaped an entire championship. To understand why this matters, we have to rewind to the peak of McLaren's 2025 season. At that point, Oscar Piastri wasn't just competitive, he was dominant. Heading into the Italian Grand Prix at Monza, he led the Drivers' Championship by 34 points over Lando Norris. Momentum was on his side, confidence was growing, and for the first time, the paddock was seriously discussing Piastri as a future world champion, not just a rising star. Then came Monza. On track, the situation looked simple. Norris had pitted later, lost time with a slow stop, and rejoined behind Piastri. McLaren's call was to correct the order. From the pit wall's perspective, this was fairness. From Verstappen's perspective, it was something far more dangerous, a line being crossed. Piastri hesitated. He questioned the order. And then, he complied. That moment, Verstappen argues, was the beginning of the end. Because in Formula One, once a driver proves he will yield without absolute necessity, the team's leverage changes permanently. Strategy stops being neutral. Decisions stop being hypothetical. And suddenly, the driver is no longer shaping the championship. He's reacting to it. Verstappen's view is shaped by his own career. At Red Bull, the rule has always been clear. If you're fast enough, you don't move. And if the team wants control, it must justify it unequivocally. In contrast, McLaren's so-called level playing field may have been equal in theory, but in execution, it depended heavily on timing, optics, and pressure. And here's the brutal irony. McLaren believed they were protecting harmony. In reality, they may have destabilized their strongest asset. After Monza, Piastri's season subtly shifted. Not dramatically, but psychologically. The margins became smaller. The risks became fewer. Meanwhile, Norris gained confidence, rhythm, and, ultimately, momentum. By the time the championship reached its climax, the narrative had flipped. Piastri, once the favourite, was now chasing, not just points, but authority. By season's end, the numbers told a devastating story. Norris was world champion. Verstappen, written off earlier in the year, surged from 104 points behind to finish just 2 points short of a legendary comeback. And Piastri, third, a result that, on paper, looked respectable, but in context, felt like a collapse. This is why Verstappen doubled down on his claim that the title would have been decided earlier if he had been driving the McLaren. To him, the car was good enough. The opportunity was there. What failed wasn't performance, it was internal conviction. Lando Norris, understandably, rejected that narrative. He accused Verstappen of ignorance, of projecting Red Bull's aggressive mentality onto a different team culture. He dismissed the comments as talking nonsense. But notably, Norris didn't deny one thing, that McLaren's approach required compromise. And compromise in a title fight is lethal. What happened next stayed mostly behind closed doors. But multiple sources suggest the McLaren garage became deeply divided. Engineers aligned themselves more closely with one side or the other. Strategic calls were scrutinized more aggressively. Trust, once fractured, is difficult to rebuild in a sport where milliseconds define careers. This is where the story becomes bigger than 2025, because 2026 is coming. New chassis, new power units, a total reset. And in resets, unresolved tensions don't disappear, they resurface. Verstappen enters this new era with enormous credibility. Despite losing the title, he was voted the best driver of the year by both his fellow racers and team principals. His comeback run, achieved amid internal Red Bull turmoil and the shock dismissal of Christian Horner, reinforced his reputation as the ultimate reference point. McLaren, meanwhile, face an uncomfortable question. Can they afford to manage two title-capable drivers the same way again? And Oscar Piastri faces an even bigger one. If the same situation happens in 2026, will he obey? Because if Verstappen is right, if yielding once truly means surrendering control, then Piastri's future decisions may define not only his career, but the entire balance of power in Formula One's next era. And that's why this wasn't just comment. It was a warning. So here's the real question. When the lights go out in 2026, will Oscar Piastri still be driving for McLaren's championship vision? Or will he finally start driving only for himself? And if he doesn't, will Max Verstappen be the one waiting to capitalize? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss any of our latest videos.